All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for joining in today and giving us your precious time. Prabhuji, we are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on the second canto, chapter 7, and the verse for today is 32 and 33. So before we start, I'll hand over to Indulekha Mataji, who will recite the Mangalacharan. Mataji, over to you. Thank you
Hare
very
Krishna.
much for volunteering.
Krishna, thank you. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandyaham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganalita Saganaragunatan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganalalita Shri Visakhan Vichamcha Ye Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Harim Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindu Bhavaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatamaham bande Shri Guru Dina Taranam Pramananda Madhavam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Ishwaram Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Shrunvatam Sakatha Krishna Punya Savana Kirtanaha Sriti Anta Stoti Abhadrani Vidunoti Shuristatam Dastapaisha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Slokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtike. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, would you like me to read the verse also, or are you going to read?
I'll read the verse. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.
Thank you.
Thank you. So today we're on a continued reading of Canto 2, Chapter 7, Scheduled Incarnations, and this evening we're on text 32 and 33. Very nice part of the Bhagavatam. So, text 32, Goper make pratihate brajavi plavaya Devi bivar shati pashun kripaya rirakshu Darto chilindram iva sapta dinani sapta Vasho mahidram anakaika kare sharilam. Translation. When the cowherd men of Vrindavan, under the instruction of Krishna, stopped offering sacrifice to the heavenly king Indra, the whole tract of land known as Vraj was threatened with being washed away by constant heavy rains for 7 days. Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy upon the inhabitants of Braj, held up the hill known as Govardhan with one hand only. Although he was only 7 years old, he did this to protect the animals from the onslaught of water. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Children play with an umbrella, generally known as a frog's umbrella, and Lord Krishna, when he was only 7 years old, could snatch the great hill known as the Govardhan Parvat at Vrindavan and hold it for 7 days continuously with one hand, just to protect the animals and the inhabitants of Vrindavan from the wrath of Indra, the heavenly king, who had been denied sacrificial offerings by the inhabitants of Brajabhumi. Factually, there is no need of offering sacrifices to the demigods for their services if one is engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. Sacrifices recommended in the Vedic literature for satisfaction of the demigods are a sort of inducement to the sacrificers to realize the existence of higher authorities. The demigods are engaged by the Lord as controlling deities of material affairs. And according to Bhagavad Gita, when a demigod is worshipped, the process is accepted as the indirect method for worshipping the Supreme Lord. But when the Supreme Lord is worshipped directly, there is no need of worshipping the demigods or offering them sacrifices as recommended in particular circumstances. Lord Krishna therefore advised the inhabitants of Brajabhumi not to offer any sacrifices to the heavenly king Indra. But Indra, not knowing Lord Krishna in Brajabhumi, was angry at the inhabitants of Brajabhumi and tried to avenge the offense. But competent as the Lord was, he saved the inhabitants and animals of Brajabhumi by his personal energy and proved definitely that anyone directly engaged as a devotee of the Supreme Lord need not satisfy any other demigods, however great, even to the level of Brahma or Shiva. Thus, this incident definitely proved without a doubt that Lord Krishna is the personality of Godhead, and that he was so in all circumstances, as a child on the lap of his mother, as a boy of 7 years old, and as an old man of 125 years of age. In either case, he was never on the level of the ordinary man, and even in his advanced age, he appeared a young boy, 16 years old. These are the particular features of the transcendental body of the Lord. So I'll speak on this verse a little bit, then go on to the next verse. Om Jnanatamadandasya Ganangana Shalakaya Chakshuram Meditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master forced open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So this is a very famous story, which is, of course, outlined in great detail in the Krishna book. And Prabhupada is, I don't know what this means. Can any of you please explain to me? Maybe it's an Indian expression. What's a frog's umbrella? I never heard of this before I read this.
Yesterday, Prabhuji was asking us, frog umbrella is, the small mushroom children just play with it, and the frog just goes there to hide. That is what is good. Yeah, that is
I see. Okay.
Mushroom.
Oh, I see. Thank you very much. So, Prabhupada is using a very nice expression here. Children play an umbrella, generally known as a frog's umbrella. So Lord Krishna, it's interesting how Prabhupada is saying that the whole area of Vrindavan, most of us, we've been to Vrindavan, and we know the size of Vrindavan and all the different places of pilgrimage. So the whole area of Vrindavan was inundated. And so when Lord Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill, he covered that huge big area. We can imagine how big Govardhan Hill, I mean, it's pretty big now, the area when we do parikrama of Govardhan Hill, those of who have done it. I haven't done it in the Dandavats bit. I've never attempted that. I've done the parikrama of Govardhan Hill, but not the Dandavat bit by bit by bit. That's quite a tapasya. And I'm not into tapasya, so I haven't done that bit. But still, to go around Govardhan Hill is an effort. So imagine the size of Govardhan Hill 5,000 years ago. As we know, it's reducing at the size of a mustard seed every year? And so it's reduced considerably in the last 5,000 years. But still, Krishna held that up on the small pinky of his left hand for 7 days. out of his causeless mercy upon the inhabitants of Braj. So, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharman Parijyaja, Mamakam Saranamraja, Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo, Mokshishashmi Masu Chaha. Just give up everything and just surrender unto me. I will give you protection. Do not fear. And that's a fact. And Krishna says on so many occasions throughout the Bhagavad Gita that if you just surrender to me, I will give you protection. There is no doubt about that. Declare it boldly, O Arjuna, my devotee never perishes. So ultimately, we take shelter of Krishna, then we're in a very, very strong and a very secure position. But of course, the mind, the material energy, the onslaught of Maya, particularly the mind, it just brings us in so many different directions. That's why controlling the mind is the most important part. Prabhupada is saying here, there's no need of offering sacrifices to the demigods, just like there is, Prabhupada says in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita also, which comes as a shock to many people, there's no need of offering sacrifices to the ancestors either. And that was one of the arguments that Arjuna presented to Krishna when he was refusing to fight. How will I be able to pay obeisances to the ancestors? And he was quoting Shastra, he's quoting scripture to support his argument. And Krishna says throughout, while speaking learned words, you're actually talking like a fool, even though he was quoting scripture. So we see that we can quote scripture, but ultimately the bottom line for all the scriptures is that we should surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a personal way. There's no need of offering sacrifice to the demigods for their services if one is engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. So that's the condition or the precondition. If one is engaged in the service of the Lord, everything else is covered. Just like when we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it's called the Maha Mantra. Everything else is covered. All the other mantras are included. So sacrifices recommended in the Vedic literature for satisfaction of the demigods are a sort of inducement, Prabhupada is saying here, very, very nicely the way Prabhupada is putting it, are a sort of inducement to the sacrificers to realize the existence of higher authorities. So people who don't accept anything, ultimately, if they accept that, oh yeah, there has to be something there, there has to be a demigod, or there has to be some idea, some notion of a higher authority, then at least there is some direction going towards a higher authority, not just a completely and total atheistic propensity of life. So there is some idea of the inducement to the sacrifice to realize the existence of higher authorities. The demigods are engaged by the Lord as controlling deities of material affairs. So they have a big post, they have a big position. What was it the other week we were discussing that also bewildered me a little bit? There was a demigod for some disease, which kind of blew my mind. And so the demigods, there's a demigod for blinking. There's a demigod, obviously the big demigods are Varuna for the oceans, and Indra for the weather, for the rain, and so on and so forth. So Indra, he got a bit of comeuppance. He kind of like got the impression, well, they should be worshiping me, because the demigods in their position, then they become a little proud. And there are so many occasions, so many cases that are described in the Bhagavatam where the demigods were put in their place and told, behave yourself. There's a higher than you, even though they are devotees. So we're in a similar position. Sometimes we think when we make a little advancement in devotional service, we think, just see, I'm so much better than the next one. But this is not the case. Trinadapi sunichina tarorapi sahishnuna manina manidena katanya sadahari. So this is our position. This is the actual state of mind that we should develop, that we have to cultivate in order to appreciate the degree to which the Maha Mantra is providing us strength, providing us with shelter, providing us with everything that we need. So that's the ultimate, is to take shelter of the Maha Mantra to take shelter of Krishna in the sage of Kali, the best way is through the chanting of the Mahamantra. So Prabhupada is saying when a demigod is worshipped, the prasad is accepted as the indirect method for worshipping the Supreme Lord. And Krishna says in Gita, that famous verse in the Gita, I think it's the 7th chapter, men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. So everything is limited and temporary in this material world. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet, the supreme destination. So Prabhupada says in that verse, about that verse, that some commentators on Bhagavad Gita claim that if you worship the demigod, you can reach the supreme destination. But it's simply not a fact. It's clearly stated in that verse that worshippers of the demigods go to the place of the demigods. Worshippers of the ancestors go to the ancestors. Worshippers of ghosts and spirits take birth among such beings. So ultimately, we're our destination, particularly as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, our destination is at the feet of Goloka Vrindavan, at the feet of Lord Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. So Lord Krishna advised the inhabitants of Brajabhumi not to worship Indra. So this is a big change of direction for them, because they had been, in their tradition, they had been worshipping Lord Indra, because they're farmers. So they want rain. They need rain to cultivate the crops. They need rain to take care of the cows so the grass will grow. And so naturally they're inclined to worship the demigods, because that's the tradition. When Krishna says, no, we just worship the cows, worship Govardhan. And of course, Indra, he got uptight. This is Lord Brahma. He was also bewildered. And he's the head of our Sampradaya. He's the creator of the universe. He also became bewildered. So this is not unnatural. The demigods are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, just in the same way as we are. They're also spirit souls. They're also subject to become bewildered from time to time. They're also living entities in the same way that we are. So the Brahmins they're the head of the Supreme Lord. The Kshatriyas are his arms, the Vaishyas are his waist, the Sudras his legs. All serve in different functions. Just like the demigods, they all serve in a different function. Regardless of that situation, if one knows that both the demigods and he himself and myself are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, that knowledge is perfect. But if we don't understand that, then we go to the different planets where the demigods reside. This is not the same as the destination of where a devotee reaches. Completely different destination. The results achieved by the demigods, the whole point is that the results achieved by the demigods are perishable. Ultimately, everything is perishable. Even Lord Brahma, we worship Lord Brahma, he is perishable. Every single living entity in the material universe is perishable. Because within this material world, the planets of demigods are worshippers, everything is subject to decay. So it's clearly stated in all these verses that all results achieved by worshipping demigods are perishable. So such worship is performed by less intelligent people. And for the vast majority of people in the world, whether they're Hindu, whether they're Christian, or whether they're Muslim or whatever, they all worship indirectly. Very, very small majority. Of course, it's growing because of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, particularly in India. Worship of Lord Krishna is growing. People respect Krishna. People will say, oh yes, Bhagavad Gita, so on and so forth. But when it comes down to it, they still go to their little Devi worship and demigod worship and this worship and that worship. But ultimately, that's the result that you get. If you invest your time and your energy and your effort in worshiping the demigods, then that's what you get. The pure devotee engaged in Krishna consciousness in devotional service to the Supreme Lord achieves eternal bliss that is full of knowledge, full of bliss, and his achievements on those of the common worshippers of the demigods, they're completely different. The Supreme Lord is unlimited. The demigods are limited. His favor is unlimited. The favor of the Supreme Lord, that is unlimited. His mercy is unlimited. Therefore, the mercy of the Supreme Lord upon his devotees is absolutely unlimited. So there are so many verses that are attributing to this, so many. And Prabhupada is explaining in so many places that if we worship, we can take a chance and worship the demigod for a particular reason, just like, for instance, the gopis, they worship the goddess Katyayani. But what do they worship the goddess Katyayani to achieve? Krishna as their husband. So if you worship a demigod, you worship Sarasvati because you want a particular result, then you want to gain knowledge, and that knowledge that is going to bring you closer to Krishna, then that is fine. Then you implore the mercy of the demigods to bring you closer to Krishna. But if you go to the demigods simply for a material result, then you may get that result, well and good, but then that result is temporary, and it actually will bring you away from Krishna, because then you'll be imagining that you're going to the absolute source when you're not. So Krishna says, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. How can it be described as the most secret of all secrets when we spread it all over the world? We go and we preach about it everywhere, all over the planet. It is the purest knowledge because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. So this is the most important part, joyfully performed. Because it brings joy, it brings immediate satisfaction, because the soul is seeking the satisfaction eternally. And unless the soul is satisfied by connecting directly with the supreme source of all satisfaction, then the soul will also be feeling a lack, even if you reach the planet of the demigods. There will always be something missing. So Prabhupada is saying here, which is quite a bold statement, Krishna saved the inhabitants and animals of Brajabhumi by his personal energy, and proved definitely that anyone directly engaged as a devotee of the Supreme Lord does not need to satisfy any other demigods, however great, even to the level of Brahma or Shiva. Now these are very, very advanced devotees, very advanced devotees. Thus this incident definitely proved without a doubt that Lord Krishna is the personality of Godhead, and he was so in all circumstances. This is where Indra kind of lost the plot. He was looking at Krishna as a mere 7-year-old boy, and he couldn't understand or appreciate that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whether Krishna was killing the cart demon, whether he was killing Putana, whether he was killing Aghasura, whether he was enjoying with the cowherd boys and killing Aristasura, whatever the case may be, he was always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He appeared to be just having fun. Killing the cart demon, and everybody was bewildered. How did this happen? How did this whole thing fall down? How was he not injured? And there was even rumors in the amongst the elders of Nanda Maharaj in the village in Vrindavan, there were rumors spreading, no, your son is definitely not an ordinary child. He must be a demigod, he may be even God himself. So all these rumors were spreading. Nanda Maharaj, he put it to bed. He just laughed at the whole thing. Well, maybe he may be a demigod, he may be God, but when there's thunder and lightning at night, he comes running into our room crying because he's afraid of the thunder. So this mood of the relationship with Krishna and being the Supreme Lord, it is covered in Vrindavan. And we are fortunate that we have got from Prabhupada the knowledge of the real identity of the Supreme Lord. So this knowledge is the king of all knowledges, this most secret of all secrets. And it's understanding, giving us the impression and the understanding that there is a difference between the body and the soul. And that is ultimately it. And we have to concentrate on what is needed to bring us closer to that deeper understanding. Culminates in what? How do we gain that understanding? How do we engage to appreciate to the fullest extent that we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord? By engaging in devotional service. Ultimately, everything leads to service, regardless of what the situation may be. Generally, in the world, people are not educated in this knowledge. They're educated in external knowledge. There's not a single university in the world that is dedicated to cultivating this knowledge, which is the ultimate knowledge. As far as human education or ordinary education is concerned, people are involved in so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, so on and so forth. But ultimately, there's no department of knowledge anywhere in the world or in any of the big famous universities, no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. And if that basic understanding was given in the universities of the world, all the other faculties of knowledge would automatically be embraced. But because that one faculty is left out, then the world is in chaos. So because we're not appreciating that the soul is the most important part of the body, without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. So without the presence of Krishna, nothing has any value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. So Prabhupada is saying here that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all circumstances, as a child on the lap of his mother, as a boy of 7 years old, as an old man of 125 years of age. In either case, he was never on the level of the ordinary man, and even in his advanced age, he appeared as a young boy, 16 years old. These are the particular features of the transcendental body of the Lord. So although Krishna was on the planet for 125 years in our time, he appeared in the Battle of Kurukshetra as a 16-year-old. As a 16-year-old. So very few could understand that this is the Supreme Lord. Even those who had his direct association, they couldn't understand, particularly the likes of Duryodhana and Karna. Although they were close to Krishna, they saw Krishna every day. Even Duryodhana, at one point, he tried to have Krishna arrested when Krishna came as a peacemaker. So this is the direct association of the Lord. That's why it's described as the most secret of all secrets. The confidential part of knowledge. Simply knowing that the spirit soul is different from the body, and we're a part and parcel of the supreme soul. Immutable, indestructible, eternal. And that relationship with Krishna is there right now at this very moment in time as we speak. But it gives no positive information about the soul. Sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body, but then when the body is finished, then one is liberated from the body, the soul remains in a void and becomes impersonal. This is another trap of Maya. It's so unfortunate for people to engage in the process of understanding or trying to understand spirituality, but they reach the conclusion that it's all one, it's all impersonal. That's why when Prabhupada gave the instructions to his disciples in the early days, Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarine. So he came to get rid of voidism and impersonalism. Prabhupada lectured on that so much. It's such a snare of Maya. So if we remain in this void and impersonal aspect of life, then we're trapped. The soul, which is active within this body, how can it be inactive after being liberated from the body? So the impersonalists, they go into this Brahma Jyoti, into this oneness where there's no activity. If we're eternal, then we're eternally active. Why would we be active now in this very lifetime? In this material consciousness, we're active. Why would we be inactive then when we reach a stage of perfection? It doesn't make any sense. So the king of all knowledge. So Prabhupada is saying, these are the particular features of the transcendental body of the Lord. To understand that the Lord is the Lord, whether he's in the lap of his mother, whether he's a 7-year-old, whether he's 26-year-old, 125 years old, whatever the case may be, the Lord is always the Lord. So the next verse. When the Lord was engaged in his pastimes of the rasa dance in the forest of Vrindavan, enlivening the sexual desires of the wives of the inhabitants of Vrindavan by sweet and melodious songs, a demon of the name Shankachuda, a rich follower of the treasurer of heaven, Kuvera, kidnapped the damsels, and the Lord severed his head from his trunk. That's an interesting verse. The wives, enlivening the sexual desires of the wives of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. So this appears to the external point of view to be completely and totally immoral. But there's no immorality in relationship to the Lord. That's why we cannot judge morality or immorality on the basis of our understanding in the material sense of what is morality or immorality. We have to judge on the basis of what is morality or immorality in relationship to the Supreme Lord. So from an external, mundane point of view, this is a gross activity. But because it's connected with the Supreme Lord, enlivening the sexual desires of the wives of the inhabitants of Vrindavan by sweet and melodious songs. But this cannot be imitated. That's why Prabhupada has always warned us against jumping straight into the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he's always said that we should systematically go through all the cantos of the Bhagavatam right up to the 10th canto. And if we do that, Prabhupada said, we are guaranteed to go back to Godhead. Guaranteed. Because then we'll understand, we'll begin to appreciate the nature of the Rasa Leela and the nature of the Supreme Lord and his relationship with all of us. So Prabhupada, the verse is saying, a demon of the name Shankachuda, a rich follower of the treasurer of heaven, kidnapped the damsels, and the Lord severed his head from his trunk. Again, just like by the Hiranyakashipu, just finished him off just like a mosquito, just like an insect. Just severed his head from his trunk without hesitation. So this again, it sounds, wow, this is pretty gross, this is pretty heavy. Just chopped off his head. Where's the peace and love and the nice goody atmosphere here? It doesn't exist. No, it doesn't exist. Because we cannot begin to think or even begin to judge the Supreme Lord from our mundane point of view of what is right and what is wrong. Krishna describes that at length in Bhagavad Gita, 16th chapter, what is right and what is wrong. But as far as we're concerned, in our position, we do not know what is to be done. We do not know what is not to be done. The Supreme Lord is saying that in the 16th chapter. That is the problem with today's society. Nobody knows what is to be done. Nobody knows what is not to be done. The world is in chaos, complete chaos. Everybody has a solution, but the solution is mundane. And the solution that is brought, the problem is there, solution is found, then the solution creates more problems, and then those more problems create another solution, and then it goes on and on and on forever. Ad infinitum, since time immemorial, that has been the case. It doesn't only apply to today's society, it's always been there. So we have to plant the real seed. The real seed will bring the real fruit of love and devotion to the Supreme Lord. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities get completely entangled in the different stages and forms of sinful reactions. So Prabhupada is saying in this purport, we should carefully note that the statements described here are the statements of Brahmaji to Narad. And he was speaking to Narad of events that would happen in the future. During the advent of Lord Krishna, the pastimes of the Lord are known to the experts who are able to see past, present, and future. And Brahmaji, being one of them, foretold what would happen in the future. The killing of Shankachuda by the Lord is a more recent incident after the Rasa Leela and not exactly a simultaneous affair. So again, time. We see time in linear. It goes from A to B to C in a straight line. But time in the spiritual world is on a completely different level to our concept of time. As is described in the Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto, there's time in the spiritual world, there's time in Goloka Vrindavan, but the time has no effect. There's still time. Everybody wakes up in the morning, everybody performs their duties throughout the day, everybody goes to sleep at night, and so on and so forth. And they wake up again the next morning, go through the whole motions. So the time is there, but the time has no effect. Just like time had no effect on Krishna when he was here on the planet. He still appeared as a 16-year-old boy, even though he was 125 years old. So when time has no effect like that, then we tend to think, oh, time, yeah, wake up in the morning, grow old, and then die and become a teenager or a youth and go through all the different motions of life. It doesn't work like that in the spiritual world. So our concept of time, the spiritual concept of time, are two completely different things. The pastimes of the Lord are known to the experts who are able to see past, present, and future. And then, so Prabhupada is saying here, it's not exactly a simultaneous affair. In the previous verses, we have seen also that the Lord's engagement in the affairs of the forest fire was described along with its pastimes of punishing the Kaliya snake. And similarly, the pastimes of the rasa dance and the killing of Shankachuda are also described here. The adjustment is that all these incidents would take place in the future, after the time when it was being foretold by Brahmaji to Narad. The demon Shankachuja was killed by the Lord during his pastimes at Horika in the month of Falguna. And the same ceremony is still observed in India by the burning of the effigy of Shankachuda one day prior to the Lord's pastimes at Horika, generally known as Holi. Generally, the future appearance and the activities of the Lord or his incarnations are foretold in the scriptures, and thus the pseudo-incarnations are unable to cheat persons who are in knowledge of the events as they are described in the authoritative scriptures. I remember at Gorpanim this year, I attended one of the outlying temples of ISKCON in South London, and we performed the burning of the effigy of Shankachuda. It was very nice. There was about 50 devotees there. We built a big bonfire, and it was great fun. It was a beautiful day, unusual for March in England, and we did a very enthusiastic burning of the Shankachuda demon. So Prabhupada is saying here, the future appearance and activities of the Lord or his incarnations are foretold in the scriptures. So this, again, if it's not in the scripture, don't take it seriously. There's so many incarnations, so many Mayavadis appear, and so many incarnations appear who are claiming to be an incarnation of God, and people even buy property in the future when that incarnation leaves his body. People even buy property in this future incarnation so as they can live near the future. I mean, it's chaos, complete chaos. People don't know. People are so easily misled. Not only are they easily misled, they want to be misled because they want this cheap aspect of a relationship with God, that God is existing in their mind and they can just mold God in such a fashion as can suit their frivolous mentality. It's just so unfortunate to come so close to the nature of the absolute truth and to just blow it like that. Instead of following the scripture, we can engage in the pastimes with the Lord to the fullest extent and be completely and totally in bliss 24 hours a day. We don't have to fabricate anything. We don't have to imagine or making up stories about who God is and who he isn't. And this applies to all the religions. We're not picking on the Hindu religion. It applies to all the religions. There's so many incarnations of Jesus and the second coming of Jesus and so on. It's crazy. It's just crazy. If people only followed the Shastra, their own Shastra, whatever Shastra they're following. Prabhupada used to say, if you want to follow the Bible, you want to follow the Quran, then follow it. And just observe the rules and regulations in your own scripture. But don't make up stories and make up, all this nonsense caricatures of who God is in your mind and who he's supposed to be, according to your whimsical idea of who God is. It's just so unfortunate. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are entangled in so many different stages and forms of sinful reactions, making up stories that, this is God. When the seed of a particular tree is sown, the tree does not appear to immediately to grow. It takes time. At first it is small, sprouting plant, then it assumes the form of a tree, then it flowers and bears fruit. And when it is complete, the flowers and fruits are enjoyed by persons who have sown the seed of that tree. So if we sow the seed of devotional service, and we sow that seed deeply in our heart, not just externally, going through the motions of attending to different aspects of our religion according to whatever degree we're following. But if we actually develop that love in the heart, then that's the result that we get. When you plant love, you get love. A man who performs sinful acts in the same way, then he's going to bear the fruits of those sinful activities. There are different stages. The sinful action may have already stopped within the individual, but the results of the fruit of that sinful action are still to be enjoyed. Prabhupada gives the perfect example of that when you have a fan and it's spinning around, you can unplug the fan, but it's still spinning. The fan is still going. The electricity is disconnected, but there are sins which are still in the form of a seed, and there are others which are already fructified and they're giving us fruit, and we're enjoying this as distress or pain or enjoyment or suffering. So it's completely and totally up to us what we want to do with our lives. Now we've come so close to the devotional service of the Lord, so close. So now all we have to do is take that last step and just dive in and relish the fruits of this devotional aspect of our lives. Mahatma Sadurlabha, such a great soul is very rare. So we have reached this stage now where we can really and totally completely commit to the service of the Lord, to the service of Prabhupada. Prabhupada has offered us, given us so much opportunity. Simply read my books, simply follow my instructions, listen to my tapes, read my books, engage in transcendental service to the Lord. There was one time when in Boston in '68, when the devotees were printing their own books, printing the Back to Godhead, collating the books, putting them together as Prabhupada was dictating them on the dictaphone. And Rai Ram was in charge of the ISKCON press at the time. And he didn't want to go out on Harinam. Satrup Maharaj was telling me this. He just wanted to concentrate on doing the books. And Prabhupada wrote to Satrup Maharaj and said, if need be, close the temple, close down the press, stop printing the books, but the Harinam shouldn't stop. The Harinam is the Yuga Dharma. This is the important aspect. Everything else can be put on hold, but the Harinam, that must go out. The devotees are sending me, every Saturday, they send me the video clips of the Harinam in London. And it's so nice to see. It's so wonderful to see. Harinam is the essence of our life. The chanting, yes, we have our own japa, we have our own individual personal japa, but the Harinam, that is the essence. I went out today on Food for Life in Kisumu to one of the orphanages around here. And the children were chanting so enthusiastically. It was so nice to see. Of course, they've been trained by previous devotees before I came. And they made a wonderful welcome. They sang such a welcoming song. It was so beautiful, so nice, so innocent. So this is what we want. We want this innocence in our spiritual life. We don't want all this complication and mixed up devotion. We want pure devotion. So the more we become childlike, that doesn't mean that we don't use our intelligence, but the more we become childlike and surrender to the process, then the more we'll get out of it. So a person who's completely and totally ended the reactions of all sinful activities, who is fully engaged in pious activities, freed from the duality of this material world, becomes engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So that is Krishna. Krishna is saying, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, give up all varieties of religion, just surrender unto me. I will give you protection, do not fear. Whereas Lord Chaitanya, he has putting no preconditions. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting the holy names of the Lord. None. Just simply chant. That's all we have to do. Engage in the process, engage in the Yuga Dharma, and to the best of our ability, wherever we are, wherever we happen to be, in our own little neighborhood, we can all organize a little Harinam party and go out. Don't be afraid what the neighbors will think. And those silly Hare Krishnas, who cares what they think? We're not interested in what the population thinks, what the vox populi is. These are all conditioned souls struggling in the grip of Maya, suffering immeasurably. And if we get out and we chant the holy names of the Lord, people may mock, people may ridicule, just like I did when I met the devotees. All I did was mock and ridicule the devotees for a year, chanting in mock glory of the Supreme. I didn't know what I was doing, but still, it was a year later that I actually came across the temple and eventually joined with no intention of joining, and here we are, so many years later. So we have no idea the effect the holy name will have. No idea. Prabhupada said so many times, I started this movement with a pair of cartels sitting under a tree in New York City in Tompkins Square Park. Simply with a pair of cartels. And then so many boys and girls, they joined me. Brahmananda and his brother, he was Gargamuni. They were the first ones to stand up and dance. Prabhupada mentions this so many times. They were the first ones to stand up and dance, and they danced and danced and danced, and so many people joined them. Spontaneous. It was spontaneous. It wasn't forced. Nothing is forced. Nothing can be forced. Love cannot be forced. It has to be pure and uncontaminated, without any consideration of anything else. Just throw our hands in the air and just surrender to the process. So devotional service is so potent that simply by engaging in the activities of devotional service, one becomes enlightened without a doubt. Prabhupada is saying. A practical example of this can be seen in the previous life of Narad, who in that life happened to be the son of a maidservant, no education, nor was he born in a high family, but when his mother was engaged in serving great devotees, Narad also became engaged, and sometimes, in the absence of his mother, he would serve great devotees himself. So it doesn't matter about the background, doesn't matter how we came to Krishna consciousness, that's all that is irrelevant. None of that is important. The main thing is that we're here now, and we have this opportunity to engage in this wonderful, wonderful, glorious process. And simply chant, dance in ecstasy, get a little tired, take a little rest, feel a little hungry, take a little prasadam. It's so easy. It's so easy. And that's what we're engaged in to do eternally. And then it goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and the bliss just increases unlimitedly, without cessation. I do not understand, Lord Chaitanya says, how much nectar is contained between those two syllables, Krishna. So that's all we have to do. We have to engage, get into that sandwich of engaging in the holy names of the Lord. Krishna. This is our life. This is our soul. This is our savior. Nothing else will matter. Nothing else does matter. So the verse again, when the cowherd men of Vrindavan, under instruction of Krishna, stopped offering sacrifice to the heavenly king Indra, the whole tract of land known as Braj was threatened with being washed away by constant heavy rains for 7 days. Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy upon the inhabitants of Braj, held up the hill known as Govardhan with one hand only, although he was only 7 years old. He did this to protect the animals from the onslaught of water. Jai. Thank you very much. Are there any comments or any questions on either of these verses? All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful session and both the verses. I was one of them as well who looked at the Hare Krishna monks chanting on Soho Street when I was going to work on Tottenham Court Road every day, and I thought these were mad people. So I was one of them as well, and I said, "Oh my God, what do they know about Hinduism?" And
Oh, it's great. It's great. Isn't it wonderful? It's just wonderful. I mean, it's just so nice that you've come full circle. We're now trying to engage in the process, trying to dedicate our lives to the chanting of the holy name, perfecting our own life, and then giving that to others. Now that we've like when you taste the apple, then you know, okay, it tastes. There's a taste there. So it's no use looking at it and putting it in front of a mirror. We put it in front, put a beautiful plate of, the Raj Bhog in front of a mirror. We can't enjoy the Raj Bhog in the mirror. You have to actually taste it. It has to be tasted. So, and the mirror will reflect everything exactly as it is. So until we dive in and really just jump in, when you want to learn how to swim, you just have to jump in and just, when the same when you're riding a bicycle, you just have to go along and pedal, and then ultimately you're going along by yourself. So we're very, very fortunate. Yeah, I think so many of us, we came to Krishna consciousness with that attitude. I certainly did. I was so mocking of the devotees. I mean, perished the thought, of the way in which I was just mocking the devotees was like, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. But the devotees were so merciful, so merciful. Gave me the big plate of halava and said, okay, eat this and shut up. So that's what I did. So I ate it and I shut up, and then that was it. So, yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can you accept my humble obeisances? So good to Srila Prabhupada. Yes, Prabhuji, so many like you, you talk about the South London temple earlier on. Is it the small temple that you went to in South Norwood?
Yes.
Oh, that is where I was initiated. I lived there for 6 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I still miss that temple, that place, I still miss it. At some point, there was one person who was the vice president of that temple, and he said he was an martial art teacher. He said when he was in London and he saw the Hare Krishna people dancing, he had his big burger in his hand and he was mocking them, showing them the burger.
Wow.
And finally, when he managed, one of his friends took him to the temple. He was surprised. He was amazed. First time he came, they gave him a big bucket of dal. They said, go and serve. And he just tripped and the whole dal went all over. But nobody told him anything. And he said, how come? If I was in somewhere else, I would be scolded. I will be shouted at. But look at these people. They say, it's okay, Prabhuji, don't worry. He says that word, that phrase, that sentence changed him completely. And at some point, he became the vice president of the temple. Wow. And we used to laugh at him all the time. He was very, very nice. I had the greatest time of my life. I can say it was 6 years I lived in the temple, and I still miss it. I
That's
really miss
wonderful.
that place, you know. And whenever I'm in UK, I go and visit that place. Whenever I'm in UK,
Wow.
I go and visit that place. Yeah.
It's so
Thank you,
nice.
Prabhuji.
It's so
Yeah,
nice.
thank you.
Yeah, well, and that's a lovely Leela pastime that you just explained. And we all have our own little Leela pastimes that were how we came to Krishna consciousness, how we engage with the devotees. And I
Yeah,
mean,
my Guru Maharaj used to come and spend lots of time there. And
mm,
actually, the gurus, they rarely go to anybody's house, you know. But
yes.
my Guru Maharaj, I did not know him at all. And he landed up in my place in Mauritius. And
Oh,
he just said he wanted to see my two daughters were already initiated by him, and I was not in Krishna consciousness. They were fully in Krishna consciousness, getting initiation and all. So my Guru Maharaj said when he visited Mauritius, he wanted to see these two young disciples' parents. So he come to my place. And then he dragged me from my material opulence to the temple. He
oh,
did
that's
that.
wonderful.
He
Yeah.
literally dragged me because I was so absorbed. Business, work, house, family, and everything was fine. And then he said, no, this is not your place. And then
Wow.
when Guru Maharaj he left after a couple of months, I lost business. I fell very sick. I stayed in the hospital. I had operation, and I told my daughters, "What kind of guru you have? He come to my place, and now look what has happened." But I couldn't realize that he has come to take me out of his Maya. He has come
Wow.
to take me to Madhav. I didn't realize that. I was always complaining and crying and all. My daughter said, "Don't worry, mom. Don't worry, mom." I said, "What not to worry? Look what has happened to me." But
You see?
then when I was dragged to that temple, it was like in heaven. And
Yes.
my life was very, very sublime from there. And I realized what has happened, you know, because at my
Yes.
place, I had to cook meat because my husband was eating meat. I was not eating. My daughter was not. That I had to cook. So I would cry every morning, though. I would say, Krishna, just offering little water, a leaf, and a tulsi leaf. I didn't even know about Bhagavad Gita, Patram, Puspam, Phalam. I didn't know about that. But I was
Wow.
just doing that. So even that water, I would just pour it in a tree because I didn't know it. Maha, I have to drink it. I didn't even know that.
Wow.
So when Krishna, I would tell Krishna every day, I cannot cook for you. The day I can cook for you, I will cook. So Krishna took me to the temple, cooking twice a day, 3 times a day, every day till now. Krishna said, "Do you want to cook for me? Come on, let's go."
Wow.
That is my Leela with Krishna.
That's so nice.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
so
you,
sweet.
Prabhuji.
That's so
Thank you.
sweet. Yeah, yeah. And everyone has a story by the mercy of Prabhupada. Prabhupada is, what would we do? What kind of a life? Imagine just going through your life like that and not knowing Krishna, not coming in touch with this philosophy. I mean, it's like it's inconceivable. It's just inconceivable, and dying in that state of ignorance. We've been saved from that. We've been saved from that. We're so fortunate. Really, we have to count our blessings every day, every minute in time. We have such a great debt of gratitude to Srila Prabhupada. Jai, thank you very much for giving us that little snippet of your background story. It's so nice to hear. It's always so nice to hear how devotees have come to Krishna consciousness. So nice, so wonderful. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Indulekha Mataji, and thank you very much, Prabhuji. I think we've exhausted our time, so if there are any questions, we can reserve it for next time. Let us close this session. Anybody volunteering to close this session? Okay, let me close the session then. Let us all unmute and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in glorification of Vidur Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Kripa
Sindhu
Sindhubevacha
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila
Grantaraj
Prabhupada
Grantaraj में भागवतम की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय, His Grace विदुर प्रभु की जय, एल्डोरस यात्रा की जय. Hare
Jai. Hari
Hare
Hari
Krishna,
Bol.
Hare
Jai.
Krishna,
Hare Krishna. Good
Hare
night,
Krishna,
everybody. Good
Hare
night.
Krishna,
Hari Bol.
good night.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.